Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Fireside Chat. This is the first Fire Chat of 2022. Like now, we are all back from holidays, hopefully a bit refreshed as well. Um, so this year, for the first Fireside Chat of the year, we decided to talk about motivation. So, what really motivates us, but mostly in the context of our work. We see a lot of software delivery teams always is talking about motivation. We have team members that are a bit more motivated, some team members that are a bit less motivated than others, and also there is a lot of effort that companies and teams put into motivation in general, right? So this is what we'd like to talk today about, like whose responsibility is it to motivate you, or what the role that the companies play or team leads play or individual plays in motivation in general. But before we start the conversation, don't forget to actually subscribe to the channel, put the thumbs up, and if there is anything that you'd like to talk about, let us know in the comments. But there we go, let's go straight to it. Motivation, guys, like we've been dealing with that for a very long time ourselves. Like, whose responsibility is it to motivate you or other team members?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? So, whose responsibility is it? Well, you can take different points of view, in my opinion. I think it's a motivation is needed both from the company or the business that you work for, and is needed for yourself, right? From yourself's point of view, if you're not motivated to do your work or what you do, then it's not a very pleasant experience at all. And you spend a lot of time at work, so if you're not motivated, you're torturing yourself in a way, right? So from that point of view, it is your personal responsibility, or at the very least it's a very strong personal concern, right? But from a business point of view as well, if your people are not motivated, then they are not productive, they are not leading, they are not helping you move forward in your business, and they're just watching the clock and doing the bare minimum that needs to be done. And you obviously have many other problems related to that as well. So as a business, having people that are demotivated is also a major risk, and could actually be a survival risk for business. So it is a problem on both sides, but it's a responsibility that I don't want to use the word shared, because shared is some way means that you need to both of you kind of sit together and come together and think about motivation and so on. But it's definitely a responsibility that exists on both sides.
All right. So I agree with that. But I think we're conflating there who is interested in you being motivated and who's responsible accountability, let's say, or who's the person that can do something about it. And for me, that's just you. Like you, people, the company can create an environment where people can feel motivated. You could be in a project that is really cool, and that will trigger you and so on. But that's a very internal thing. No, it needs to,
It's a
you
state
know,
of mind almost.
it, yeah, and it also flows, right? Like it's not like you're always, top of the wave kind of thing, like woo, super hype, let's do this. No, Steve Ballmer kind of no thing that it changes, right? And as you go, as you deal with things in life, not just work, like it affects you, right? And you have different levels of energy and different. So it is definitely something that is changing. Um, and that for the most part, I'm very much into, you are the one that can change that, right? um and this is one of those things that I have an issue with when we're talking about motivation, where people played the role of a victim in that sense, because I don't, yes, people can support you to, create that environment and so on, but in the end, it's your responsibility. It's not like, oh, this is happening to me. No, it's not that attitude of helplessness. When it comes to something like this, is not something that I agree with. No? So I don't know. I think whose responsibility is it? It's sorry, my
Awesome.
responsibility, no, or your responsibility as an individual to find that and create that environment. Everyone else can help you. So that's my take on that.
I love the distinction that you were making, Jose, like who is interested as well. And I will go a bit further. Like, for example, if you do an introspection, when people say, let's say, oh, I'm very motivated right now because I really like the project that I'm in, or I like the client or the technology that I work with and stuff like that, right? It's common for us to hear, like, I like what I'm doing and stuff. But now there is another question underneath that. Who created that environment? Yeah, so bear with me now. So for example, you are motivated because you are in an environment that were potentially created by others. So there is a project that was created that worked with a certain methodology or certain technologies and stuff, and you happen to join that project or to join that company that does that. So you join an environment that you feel motivated. But that environment was not created by you. It was created by someone else that you joined, and you relate to that. See what I'm saying? So you are motivated by an environment that was created by someone else, not by you. And then there is another side, like when you create your own motivation. I say, look, I will create an environment where I can be motivated. And that is very different. For example, when you are in a situation and there are things that you don't like or you would like to be doing, and then say, like, I will create an environment where I feel motivated, or I'll change the things in the environment that I'm in that feels. Because the reason that I'm making this distinction is that if you are in a person that creates an environment where you are motivated, you are less, how can I say, impacted by the change of their environment. So everything that there is a change and you are not contributing to the change, your motivation levels vary and you don't know how to cope with that. But if you are always used to influence the environment, you can calibrate that.
I think I know what you're trying to say, Sandro, but I think there's a logical fallacy in there.
Okay, go on.
So if you say that you are in an environment where you are motivated by that environment, but you did not create that environment, you did. You are part of that environment. You can't be in an environment and motivated by it and not be a part of that environment.
Right. Okay.
So your actions matter. So the fact whether you realize it or not, if you are motivated by an environment, you are part of that environment and you created that motivation for yourself at the very least. And of course, the environment can be nurturing and could be aligned to helping you with that. But you're not once you are in something, you're not an outsider. You are part of it. So you create it. So that's what I mean by the logical fallacy in there. So what I know what you are trying to say is that,
Okay.
like, the other one is true, that if you are demotivated in an environment and you think that you are not the reason that you are demotivated, or you're not part of the reason that you are demotivated, that is untrue, because you are. But the other one, by the same logic, is also true, that if you are motivated in your environment, you are part of the reason that you are motivated.
I don't think that just being in that environment means that you significantly contribute to that environment. So
Mm.
I understand what you're also saying, but like I'm not saying if there is a true, like, completely logical fallacy in there. But because, like, one thing is, like, I am in an environment, so I joined a company, and or there is another directive from the company that I work for. There will be a new project in there, and they want me to be there. And in that new scenario, we will be doing this kind of work with this kind of technology, with this kind of people. So it really depends on the kind of person you are. You are put in an environment or you join an environment, and then you can enjoy what the environment is, but that doesn't tell how much you significantly contribute to that environment or the evolution of that environment. And what I'm trying to say is, for some people, they will take the environment that they are in, and their motivation will calibrate according to how they relate to that environment. But when there are changes in that environment, their relationship with the environment also change, but they are on the receiving end. The environment is changing, and that affects their motivation. Where other people, they have a different relationship. They contribute to the change of the environment. And that contribution is what keeps them motivated.
But that's what I'm trying to say. If you are motivated in an environment, by that very fact, you are contributing into that environment. So motivation is almost like a chemical reaction. You're within that environment. If you are demotivated by environment, you are in a way negatively contributing to that environment. It is not necessarily your fault. That's a separate thing, and we can discuss that. But it is an emotion to some level, right? When you are demotivated in an environment, you are a net, in a way, negative within the environment. Doesn't have to be your fault. If you are motivated within your environment, you are actually a net positive within the kind of the overall motivation of that environment. That's what I'm trying to say.
I see. Maybe like what I was saying, I understood now where you're coming from. Is more like how you react to the variation motivation.
And it's a system. You become part of that system. And if you react positively, you enforce the positive motivation loop within that system. And you act negatively, you are counter to that. And you do actually create a counter force of motivation within that system.
A negative loop.
Yeah, a negative loop, exactly.
Yeah. So because, like, for example, I see that of course, there is always a danger for us to generalize certain case or use an example for one case and then that being generalized to other places where that example doesn't fit. But I'll say it anyway. For example, what we see that is sometimes a trend with certain people. Some people join a place and they feel, you know what, this is not a good culture. They will blame the environment. And their reaction to that environment is to change the environment. They say, you know what, I don't think that I like this environment, and I will move to another environment. And then they go to the new environment that they chose to go, because they left the company and they probably went through a selection process in a few places, and there was an agreement at some point, and they chose to be in another place. And then after some time, they say, I don't like this environment, and I will go somewhere else. And for example, we interview a lot of people. We deal with a lot of people, like in our company's growing. We've been around for 80 years as a company. We interviewed loads of people. People joined us and left us. And we see different trends. For example, we see people that when you look at their work history, they have very short stunts in places. And of course, that there are many different reasons why people do that. This is why the example might fall short for certain reasons why people do that. But one of them is they go to a place they don't like. They say, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else. But they are waiting to find an environment where they feel happy. But they don't do much in order to transform an environment for them to feel part of it. So they're just trying to find an environment that is stable so that they feel that they belong. But they don't actually actively transform an environment to a place where they want to belong.
Yeah. Now, one thing, I agree with that. One thing I would say is that there is a book, it's about people's personalities and so on, that not everyone is geared to transform an environment. Some people. So I think the book is something called something like some people are weeds and others are orchids, right? Orchid is a very finicky plant. It will only survive in a very specific environment. Weeds, they'll go and they will just take over the most adverse environments, right? That's why they flourish everywhere. So there is a kind of personality trait, and given those things, I think some people are more inclined and others are less inclined to make the environment suit them from a motivation point of view. And some people are some people's motivation comes from the inside, and others are buffeted quite quickly by the outside forces as well. And I think it's important to recognize that, because it's part of it is, of course, like shaping the environment around you is an important life skill, but it's important to understand that some people are just naturally inclined and others are not so much.
Yeah.
This takes it to another point, which is shaping that environment, because we said, okay, or at least I said, it's your responsibility to find that motivation, but as a team lead or as a manager or whatever, a lot of the times you are in a position where, one, you have the authority to make a lot of those things or to impact a lot of that environment, no, for other people. And at the same time, you may want, and going back to what you were saying at the beginning, Mash, you may have an interest in people being motivated, and you want to, what can I do about it? No, what is it that I could? And I think here we also need to talk about it's extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation, because depending on where you think you're getting this motivation from as an individual, where people are getting this motivation from, the things that you can do are quite different. And they also, depending on the type of motivation, it lasts longer or not, right? And the typical example is, let's pay people more. Now they're about to leave. Let's raise the salary, and you may retain them for a while, but the things that were creating that environment that people decided to leave, usually, salary is just one of those, right? And you're just delaying something that will happen anyways. No.
Yeah.
And I think this is quite interesting. If you want to share a little bit of what you think about that.
The money, of course, like, is always like, you want to feel that you are being paid fairly, but like, I can only talk from my own perspective. Of course, like, I didn't start my career being the founder of a company, right? So most of my career I worked for other companies, and I always felt that every time I joined the company, I wanted to make it work. Right. I knew that I would find adversities. I knew that no company, I think that, like any person that after a few years in the industry, that there's no perfect companies. And every time that you take a new job, you are excited about it. And
then you start your own company, and you
exactly.
because you're going to make it perfect. And then you realize
it's not perfect. Exactly. And then you are really sure that even when you start your own, there's absolutely no.
Do it, so it's not it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So but one thing that again, I'm talking from my own perspective, from how I lived my life and stuff, and I always, like, every job I joined, I wanted to make it work, and every time that I did it, of course, that every company that I worked for, there were things that I liked that I didn't like. That's always the case, but I think that I was quite good in driving my career and driving what I wanted. And I said, look, do I want you to be jumping jobs every 6 months, or do we want you to stay in a place and make a significant impact and have a good time with the people that I just met and this new challenge that I just decided to take on? And then I was just removing the obstacles in front of me. If there were things that I didn't like, I would just remove them. And there's some of them I could not do anything about. And then it's a matter of, just suck it up. Those things in here, I'm not going to move it. That's not going to change. It doesn't matter what I do. Either it's regulation or it's a very intrinsic cultural aspect that there's no way I can change that or impact that. And then he's saying, like, look, those things in here, get over it. It's not going to change. So focus on the things that are good. And then that's what I've done. And then, like, where would I want to be in here? And create my space. And every time that I left a job, it's because the things that I wanted to do moving forward, and I think we covered that in previous episodes, the company itself could not offer to me, but not because I have any grudge or so, oh, their cultural, that I never said like, oh, the culture sucks. I think that this is a lame excuse, and I'll go further, because a lot of people, when we have these discussions, they will say, no, but there are companies that are very top down and stuff. Yes, of course there are. Really, 2022, 2021, where we are now as an industry, or probably for the past like 10, 15 years, are the average company so bad? Because maybe I was lucky throughout my career, but from all the years that I've been in the industry, in different countries and different continents, I didn't have people really cracking the whip and stuff, right? So a lot of people use extreme cases as an excuse, but most places that I've been to, I was able to have sensible conversations. I was able to say, you know what, let's talk about that. There was always like an odd person here and there that would be a bit more difficult. But most of the companies in the software industry, they tend to be far more flexible. And if you really want to impact and having certain conversations, you have the space for that. And I
That,
use that space.
I would say that we should put a pin on that. Maybe that could be a topic for another fireside chat, as in, company culture and toxic cultures.
Mhm.
That's like a
Yeah,
whole thing, because you're generalizing a lot, and there's a
No, no,
lot of
yeah.
I'm just saying
there's a
that
lot
quite
of bad
often.
stuff
I think
out
No,
there.
there are companies that there are toxic, but I think
right.
I know what you
What I'm
mean
trying to
though.
say is
Like
that
there's
yeah, so sorry, like I don't want like say, oh, but there are toxical cultures, and then they use as if they were the general case to actually shift the responsibility from the individual to the environment. That's
yeah.
what I wanted to say.
I think using the analogy, I had the weeds and orchids analogy, right? Even weeds don't survive in deserts, or most weeds don't survive in
Of
deserts,
course.
and there are deserts or equivalent of
Hmm.
in companies as well. I think what you're trying, like part of the way I would like rephrase that to an extent is that in this day and age, when software, if you're software, especially software developers or people in that profession, in so much demand, that if you find yourself in a desert, then you should
Don't worry, just
migrate.
You are really lost, right? You're
Yeah,
really lost. Yeah,
yeah. So
exactly.
migrate, and I know that we can be facetious about it, and sometimes when you are in a desert, you yourself have this imposter syndrome that you cannot go anywhere else, and so on, and so there is a lot related to that. And I think let's park that, as Jose said. We there are you can be trapped in situations where just that narrow kind of path has led you to a place where you don't have a lot of options, even in software development industry. You've been, I don't know, doing COBOL. Maybe COBOL's not the right, I'm sure they're in a lot of demand. But I see. But I think what you're trying to say is that often, like when we talk about motivation, we have more often we have more agency than we think we do. And I think this is the important part, is that to take an active role in shaping your role and what works for you, and how that aligns with the organization as well, right? Because what you can't do is live outside the organization. What you can't do is do something that you are motivated by, but the organization is not benefiting from, right? Because that is an artificial environment. It will at some point
it
collapse
will
over you.
diverge. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just two forces that are going in opposite directions. It's
exactly.
not going
So
to
you
work.
do need to align, but you often have more agency. Often the people that are quite demotivated are usually, and I don't know which one comes first, but they stop thinking that they have agency. And it's a vicious circle in a way. The more demotivated you are, the less interested you are in shaping the environment. The more the environment encroaches onto you, the more demotivated you get. So you do have agency. You do need to and it is a skill in some ways as well. You need to understand the environment around you. You need to understand all the options and which options you need to take, and you need to be proactive in that as well, right? In any organization, regardless, organizations are complex. You will find even in a team, some people who are quite motivated and others are demotivated. And why is that? You're in the same team, right? And often there you need to then try to understand, well, what are those people doing that are, really motivated? How are they putting themselves into situation, and what is their attitude that is actually leading them towards a more motivated work where yours is not, right? And I think there is a personal element to that as well.
Yeah, one thing, Sandra. So this is what I meant by extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, and you've probably seen Daniel Pink's TED Talk,
Right.
and the book Drive and so on. And if for the people that are watching this, like if you haven't, go and check those out. It will be great. Yeah. um, and you have things like external motivators, bonuses, benefits, salary, etc., that kind of stuff. And then you have intrinsic motivators, things like mastery, purpose, and autonomy. Yeah. And while it is true that it's a very individual thing, and you are the one in charge of creating that motivation and so on, let's face it, nobody hires people that are demotivated, right? Like when you hire someone, you don't say, "Oh, I like this guy because he's really demotivated." No, you hire them motivated. They really want to be with you,
I'm gonna
and then
hire
you
him
feel
because
that
he was
motivation.
miserable. Yeah, I had an
Exactly.
interview with him. He was miserable, right? And yeah, I certainly want to hire
Exactly. So the environment has a lot to do with that, right? Like it's not like let's not minimize it. Like as you were saying, in the desert, even weeds, disappear,
Parish.
right? Exactly, perfect. So there is a lot around that. Now, a lot of these things, I feel, have to do with understanding where that motivation is coming from, like what is it that drives people, and trying to create an environment where those things can flourish. And before you were saying, Sandro, if I'm in this project, and we're both in this project, but he's super motivated and I'm not motivated, like there is an aspect of self-awareness of what is it that is not fulfilling for me in this project, what is it that I want to do, which is something that people sometimes don't even ask, right? Like they go through, like, I don't know, I don't feel very well, but they don't understand where that is coming from. So what I would suggest is that's the first, like if you really want to change, like try to understand yourself and try to understand what it is that you want to achieve, and that kind of stuff, and then you'll be in a better position to create that environment around you, or focus on the things that you want to focus, and so on. And so that's one aspect, but also from the employer, or the leadership team, or the manager, or the team lead, or whatever. It's about understanding people as they are, and where they're coming from, and what it is that they want to accomplish, and making that part of your agenda. Because a lot of the times, the only thing it takes is, hey, would you like to XYZ, instead of doing it yourself, or instead of having someone else who's more prepared, or whatever, that would already creating that space where people can exercise the skills that they want to exercise, or where they can contribute the way that they want to contribute. No. So you know what I mean? Like, yes, we've been talking about, you should take ownership and do all these things, but the context is very important. And I feel like as an organization, as leaders, as managers, and so on, there is a responsibility as well around that, right? Like you're not accountable, you're not the one that, but you can create that environment where people can get less than motivated, right? Because sometimes the only thing that it takes is the word, right? Like it's, hey, yeah, well
yeah.
done, or whatever. Like,
I think you are
The,
accountable, Jose, even as a manager. You're just not accountable to that person, but you are accountable to the business that your people
you're
are
accountable to the
motivated.
business for
Yeah,
the results, and
yeah,
all of that. Yes,
exactly.
but not for people's motivation. You're
Not for an
accountable for the
individual's
results,
motivation.
and
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, and you know that the best way to achieve that is if people like what they're doing, and they're contributing, and they're doing their best, no, and that comes with motivation. And that's what I'm trying to say. So I feel like as a manager, as a leader, and so on, it's about understanding where people are coming from, like what are those drivers that people have, Is it mastery? Is it autonomy that you want? Is it, and then making sure that within the scope of what is possible, because that's the other thing, right? Like if you before you were giving an example, no, let's just rethink this project. Well, man, you know what? The project is here already. You know, this is what we're doing. Like, it's not the moment to say, does it even make sense to do this,
Yeah,
right?
you
Like,
have to understand
like,
which levers you can pull and which you can't pull,
exactly. Like,
Yeah,
within the context of what is possible, no, what
mhm.
is it that you can do? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to expand on that one because we have a lot of implied knowledge between the three of us. But like for the benefit of whoever is watching, so for example, we've been in situation ourselves as team members, but also as managers, like on both sides of the fence in a way. Like being in a project, let's say as developers, we've been in a project for a year, right? We've been in that project, working in that project, and all of a sudden, either ourselves or one of our colleagues starts questioning, why are we doing this? What is the goal of this project that we've been working on for a full year or even longer, right? And and the funny thing is, like I was discussing that with some of our people, and I was looking back at my own career. I don't think I ever asked this question this way because, like, when I see there are different reasons why you ask this question. So, and we need to be very clear with ourselves, be very honest to ourselves why we are asking that question. It might be a genuine question. After a year working on the same project with the same goals and stuff like that, you might be thinking with the right reasons. It's like, why are we doing that? But not why we're doing it. Like, are we going the right direction? Are we achieving what we should be achieving? But when you ask that question, you are genuinely trying to figure out how you're gonna provide more value, right? So like, or realign what we are doing so that we find that goal and provide more value. But more often than not, when I see people questioning the value of certain things after such a long time doing that, most of the time they are bored and they don't want to do that anymore, but they are not very honest about it. So what they try to do is to blame the environment. It's like, I don't think this project has a purpose. I don't think this project has a clear goal. But what it doesn't matter if you try to refine that goal and provide that purpose and that clear goal, they would still be questioning that because they are not questioning the goal. They are not interested in the goal anymore. They just like, I don't want to do this job anymore. And I've been there myself. There were times where I've been doing the same thing for quite an extended period of time. And I said, you know what? It doesn't really matter anymore what they do here. If they change the technology, if they change the direction, if they change whatever, I think that I want to do something different. But then I had to be honest to myself that that was the problem, because then I can address that as an individual and the business that I work for. Then we can actually have the right conversations. So like, you know what? I need a change of sceneries. Hopefully either in the same company or in a different company.
So
But like,
that's a
but
very
just
good point.
questioning why we are doing this project, it's not going to help because
But I know Jose pointed out drive as well, and he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I think that's why we're trying to say, well, can we really understand the purpose and fall behind it, and that will give us motivation. I think it's been a while since I read Drive, Daniel Pink's book, but I don't know if he talks about flow, because I think flow is more immediate. It's not directly related to purpose, right? And often this is another reason that you can be demotivated. You may have the best purpose in the world, you may have all the autonomy that you can have, and you might even be, have the environment there to work towards mastery, but you don't have flow. And what I mean by that is the enjoyment of the day-to-day tasks that you are doing, right? And this can also create a problem for yourself. Now, that day-to-day environment is partially related to things around you, but it's actually your immediate. You have the most agency towards changing that and creating that kind of flow within your work, right? So and often the part of that is a state of mind as well, right? I mean, there is a book called Flow, I've got the guy's name, but anyway, and it talks about this, and it talks about like some of the research that he was doing, and people find flow doing some of the most mundane work. That, yeah, and he was quite
Washing
surprised
the
in.
dishes.
Yeah, washing the dishes, like factory workers, like some non-skilled factory workers working a press or something. But like there is an element of finding joy in the work that you're doing and how you create flow and taking responsibility for that as well. And I think partly motivation is about your immediate, your day-to-day things. You may be getting too interrupted, right? You can maybe fix the environment with certain techniques around you, like pomodoros or so on, and this kind of thing. You may have a social issue, right? You're not getting along with your team, right? So purpose is just one element that may or may not, a purpose of that project is just one element, and normally it's not the one. It actually, it is the immediate. It's normally a bit more tactical. You're not getting along with your people around you. You're getting interrupted too much. You're not really kind of proactive in creating that kind of flow within your workspace. These can be part of the problem with your motivation.
Yeah, true, and you can clearly see the difference. For example, when people blame the motivation or the purpose of certain things, for example, that there is a some people have an attitude like, you know what, we all need to have a conversation here. I think we lost our ways, right? Maybe I'm not sure if you're right, going the right direction here. Maybe there are a few things that we should be questioning and changing and stuff. When someone has this kind of attitude, what this person is trying to do is to find a new purpose or to refine the purpose, to readjust. They feel that they lost the purpose, they lost the real reason why they're doing certain things, but they are deeply interested in find that again.
Mhm.
And so this is what I'm saying, that now you are really interested in affecting the environment, right? Others will say, I think we lost our purpose.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a reason for us to be doing that. And they just like cross their arms and they are now pushing back to the environment and say, we are not motivated to do that. So
Yeah,
someone else needs to do that.
I always find the problem with that statement, right? Like when someone says, uh, I don't want to be on that project because I don't think we are delivering value,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, but it's our responsibility to deliver value. So if we're not delivering value, it's our fault. So what
What
can
are
we
you
do
doing
to
about
deliver
it?
the value?
Exactly.
Exactly. Like leaving is the worst possible reaction to that statement.
Right. And yeah, so then we just need to be honest to ourselves and to the people
but
that we work with, so that we
but
can address the
it's
real
it's
issues.
it's not only so I completely agree, because it's a very different conversation. Hey, I need a change of scenery, I want to go to a different project, whatever. Then this project has no reason to exist. No, it's like, it's why are we doing this, and going down that rabbit hole and so on, right? Like, and I feel like to some extent that could be the case. Like, you don't have enough self-awareness to understand what is happening to you, or you go for a very simplistic kind of response to that. No. And because I want to take it as well to, okay, so if I'm helping people to do this, like, what can I do as well? Because we talked about individual responsibility a lot, right? So as a leader, manager, and so on, you can create that kind of awareness and literacy. No, there are things like, I think it's called moving motivators or something like that, from management 3.0. And there's a bunch of exercises that you can do in order to help people reflect about what are the things that drive them, and help them. And once you have those things, then you can start having a conversation, right? It's the same, like if you're helping someone through their career and so on, you want to understand, what is it that fulfills you, what is the ikigai, no, the Japanese like the purpose of your, no? So finding that sweet spot, right? and you can affect a lot of that. However, when you are in that situation where you're demotivated, it's really hard to step out of that and kind of like not let yourself be guided by just emotions or whatever, right? And I feel this is another thing that I've seen, and even myself, like I can think back to my career and having a conversation with my team lead and say, starting to talk about giving excuses, and he said, hey, that's bullshit. And me thinking about it, it's like, you're completely right. I'm just
I just want to
bullshitting.
move on.
I
And
just
sometimes you just
it's
want to
the
move on, and that's
it's
fine.
the right time. You helped me see that, and you're right. Like I'm just like I didn't, and those conversations are again, they're not nice to have, but sometimes they are the right conversations to have with people, right? But you need to understand what is happening to you. Now the other thing is how you act when those things happen, because even in that situation, like I feel like that's a, and again, I'm giving myself some leeway here, no, but accepting that yes, you're right. I'm just, this is a me thing. This is not
Yeah.
you guys, and I should do something about it. And I feel like maybe finding a different job is whatever. Um, so that's one way of approaching. But I see people who are in this negative spiral, and they behave very unprofessionally. They just sort of keep adding to or reinforcing that environment where they can there's no way that they can dig themselves out of that hole, no. And they are contributing, they are, uh, sometimes in subtle ways, other times it's just, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna whatever, like. And I feel like that's very unprofessional, right? Like that you also owe it to your team, the company, whatever, like the people that you're working, like forget about the company, the people that you're working with, you owe them that respect, no. And that hey, it's not working out for me, guys, I love you, best
But
of
this is
luck,
it's
I need to
but
find a
see,
different path for me, whatever, right? Or there are these things that are affecting me, I really need to change them, can we do something about that? Those are,
I
they
think
require
Jose,
quite a lot of self-awareness.
I think it's a very important point. But actually, the kind of self-awareness that makes you understand that I have agency and I can move the environment is also that self-awareness that actually makes you understand that actually it may not be the environment that's the problem. It's just that, I'm not up to this challenge. And admitting to that yourself, uh, it's they're quite close to each other. I think because you're not blaming others, you are already on the path to actually creating something. And even if that is not the place for you and you go somewhere else, you are going for the right reasons. You're going because you this no longer is you understood that I may have agency, but I'm not excited by it. And I know what may excite me, and I'm going to go for that particular opportunity or that particular environment, and that's okay. But I think when you come from the point of view of I'm doing all I can and the environment is not the right environment for me, uh, where you're actually just kind of laying the whole blame without fully understanding why that you are not motivated, you can go to the next thing. And the problem is intrinsic. You will have the same problem there.
This is what is exactly what I was trying to say, because like we've seen trends of people that change jobs too often, right? As I said, there might be a few other reasons why people do that, but like what people need to understand is people should do whatever they want, right? I always say that. Like an advocate that you is your own career, is your own life. You do whatever you want to do. You can control what you want to do and stuff, but what you cannot control is how people will react to the things that you do, right? So for example, now that I'm in the other side of the table where we hire people, when we hire someone, what we are doing is we are thinking the long term. You don't hire someone at, mainly in our industry, we don't hire someone for a temporary job. Like, oh, I'm gonna hire this person here just for a 2 week stunt, and that's not what we do. Like that's not what most companies do. Normally, when we hire a professional, you are bringing that professional to your team, and we want that person to thrive in your organization for a very long time. Um, but then you see the trends. For example, some people that have very short stunts in previous jobs. For me, that's a red flag. I understand from the individual's perspective, maybe they were thinking, I'm changing jobs very often because I want to get different experiences and accumulate like different knowledge or whatever. I understand your motivation to do that. But as an employer, what we see is someone that is not in the long run, someone that is not going to be strategic for the company, or someone that as soon as they join, if the environment is not ready for them, they will leave soon. And that doesn't give the confidence for companies to invest. Or people that left. So for example, some people, sometimes they join a company and they blame the company for the culture or whatever. Oh, there is a toxic culture here. And then we see their history after that company that they complained about. It was also very short stunts. And then I said, wow, this person is very unlucky, right? This person is going from one toxic culture to another, right? So when they are actually selecting where they go to. So this is where we need to be very clear, that we need to have clarity with ourselves and say, like, look, for how long am I going to be blaming the companies, or if the problem is with me? And this is the problem I never had myself. I always, like, when I join, it's like, look, I'll make this work, right? So I don't want another job. I'll make it work. And when I leave, it's because, like, you know what? Now what I need for my career is so distant from what the company can offer that makes sense for me to look for something else. But I will not be leaving that company, blaming that company for something.
Funny you should say that, because I actually, in my career, I haven't changed many jobs, admittedly. But always find the most stressful time was when I was at a new job. And in fact, I work for a consultancy, and I like pain. But even when I went to a new client, the initial time was the most stressful time, right? And now that I do discoveries, I just say stress all the way, right? It's like one week work engagement with the client. But I I agree with you too on that point, actually, because if you don't stick it out in places, I mean, of course, like here and there it can happen, right? But also it's your responsibility to kind of judge the environment and evaluate it and try to make the right decision. But you don't you if you don't do it at all or not often enough, you actually the skills around shaping the environments and building the right relationships and so on are very low in you because you haven't practiced them. So it's not just about commitment, it's actually about the kind of skills that you have, right? Because if you in your CV is not showing that you've created long lasting relationships with your teams, then that actually tells you that this area is lacking in terms of the skills that you have as well as an employer.
Yeah, and I think that even the times where we saw the red flags and say, "Oh, this person has been jumping for job to job," and the few times where we say, "You know what? Let's give this person a chance. Maybe this person didn't find the right environment to flourish." It actually just happened again. Like we were just another hop as well, right? And they kept hopping. So then this is what is important from both sides, from the individual to understand, like, if I'm always trying to say that the environment is not right, at some point you need to stop blaming the environment, right? You need to look inwards, as we say. But and for companies as well, for companies that are recruiting people, this is also a tell. I say, look, like if someone is never remains in the same place for too long, this person never managed to be important in that place for too long, or never cared, never wanted to become important or part of something bigger for too long. And then you need to decide what kind of person you want to have in an organization. Today, for example, I normally look with good eyes when I see someone that has had fewer jobs and they stay there a bit longer, because I say, you know what, this is a person that when they join the organization, they really want to belong. Of course, as we said at the beginning, like no organization is perfect, at least not from our point of view. There will always be things that we like and we don't like, but those people are finding the right motivation to resolve the things that they don't like, or at least to prioritize the things that they like and try to make it work.
Yeah, there is another extreme to that as well, though. If someone's had just like, if they've had, they've been working for 20 years and they've been in the same company in the same role, that also is not, I mean, I'd be honest, I'd look at that and I'd say, well, that's, we talk about, is it 20 years of experience or 1 year of experience 20 times?
Exactly.
So there is a counter to that as well, right?
I agree if there's no progression within the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like if
that's
you're
what I meant by the same
company,
role.
Exactly. Like if it is 20 years in the same company doing the same thing, that's a different. But if in those 20 years, you suddenly went all the way to, I don't know, director of engineering, blah, blah,
exactly.
blah,
That's
a different thing.
Because I had a growing career, and so wow, okay, I want you.
Yeah, no,
that's why I qualified
that's why I qualified that with the same role, right? In fact, otherwise I was in a company from
there's another
almost
aspect.
10 years.
Exactly, I agree. There's another aspect in what you mentioned, Sandra, around the hopping around or being in again. And I don't want to go into the toxic culture kind of thing, because I think that's a very good topic. Maybe we should talk about in particular, no, in another session. But there is this aspect of burning out or being burnt, let's say, or having this previous experience where you already put in your effort, you try to change things, blah blah blah. You give it your best, and then you simply don't want to do that again, or you don't want to go through that again. And I'm differentiating here from being burned versus burnout, because I know that there's those two can impact motivation differently. Yeah, and maybe we
can you clarify this difference so that I make sure that I understand and other people understand as well.
Burnout is it's too much, and at some point you just cannot.
You lose energy basically because you spend so much.
Exactly. And being burned is, from my perspective, is putting hope that you will be able to change things, whatever, maybe promises were made, maybe that kind of stuff, and then you invest yourself in something that in the end you feel it's not that you didn't achieve the results, but maybe you were mistreated.
Yeah. It's basically,
so it's not about promises. The outcome, but exactly. So because I can tell you, hey, if we do this, so you can make promises that maybe I can show intention, right? Like, this is what we want to do, and then my actions kind of reinforce those intentions. But there are people who straight out lie as well. And they just tell you what you want to hear.
Out by some situation, you were given certain expectations were made. Explicitly, and they were not really true, and that was really scuppered your plans as it
that kind of it kind of builds, and this is another thing that happens with people who are being in the company for a very long time and so on. It kind of builds a jaded view of the workspace in general. Every company is that, like, it's like, oh yeah, I know what this is about, right? Like, it's not gonna happen, it's not gonna, right? And that is, from my perspective, is one of the worst things that can happen to you, because if you lose out, if you become a skeptic and a cynic, and right, like, that's just you give up completely, right? You lose
faith in others, basically.
Exactly, right? Like, that's not something that personally I identify with. No, I feel like that's not agree that you
That's
should not.
being burned, is
Exactly,
it?
Being
That's
exactly.
being
burned.
Yeah.
burned rather
Now
than
Yeah,
burnout.
yeah,
yeah.
go go.
This one, I wonder if you have any control of it. You probably like being burned, by the way. So I think that this one, once you get more experience, maybe you've been burned a few times. You probably can start really trying to make sure. Of course, you can never avoid that, but like you can probably make sure that things are clarified, or some agreements are a little bit more better stated and things like that. So there's no misunderstanding. Um, but this is not something that you are fully in control, because the other side will. You don't know
I
exactly how
agree.
they're going to react, right?
I agree. There are things that you can do on that. So the whole, forgive but don't forget,
Yeah,
right? That part is important because you should not let that. I know that I'm maybe gonna take it to a very personal no, but if I don't know, someone cheats on you, your significant other cheats on you or whatever, does that mean that every other person that you're going to meet is going to cheat on you? Is that the way that you should be looking at the world? You know, that changes you, right? But
yeah,
you decide
totally.
whether that changes you or not. You decide whether you want to trust before
If you
remove that.
take
So
that
it,
singular experience and
and turn it
generalize that.
into and generalize it, yeah. And this is
Yeah,
something you were talking before about toxic cultures and people being,
yeah,
like, and that's a very common pattern,
exactly.
right? Like I went through this. Now every little sign of something, like, I'm gonna take it that way, and I'm not gonna even give the benefit of the doubt or whatever, right? So that you have agency and how you approach those things and how you react to those things, but you don't forget. That's the other part, right? You need to learn from. You can't just go and trust everyone and
Yeah,
everything's gonna, no, this is not gonna happen again. No, like, you need to be aware of that and decide what kind of risk you want to take on some of these things, right? And
yeah,
consistency is one of those. Like, hey, this is not possible today, but we're gonna try to do this and this and this, and if this is what's gonna happen, then you follow up with that. And as when you see that those things are not happening and there's not a reason for it, then you have enough a reason to say, oh, you know what, f this. No, I'm not gonna
exactly.
whatever. But
But
that's
then
also a choice.
exactly, because then this is a slightly different, because then the environment did something to you that you felt that it was unfair, right? So let's put this way. I want to tackle the other one, the burnout thing and the relationship with motivation, because I think that there are two sides to it, right? Sometimes you are extremely motivated to do a job and you put all your energy into it. There's no pressure, there's no one cracking the whip and saying, hey, I want, this is the deadline. No, you created that pressure. And this happens in a lot of healthy organizations. I like to think that we are a healthy organization, but we are not unique. There are many other organizations where developers have a sensible conversations about deadlines and things like that. So, but then people put a lot of pressure themselves. A lot of people that get burned out. Uh, a lot of that burnout from what we've been experienced, maybe in our bubble, let's say, is self-inflicted. It's not necessarily like they were really pushed hard to work on weekends and stuff. If that is the scenario, then the burnout is justified. But a lot of times it's self-inflicted. We put that pressure on ourselves, and that motivation may even contribute to that, right? So in terms of we pushing ourselves to the limit, and at some point we just say, blind, wow, I'm exhausted.
So motivation is a double-edged sword kind of thing. Is what you're trying to say.
Exactly.
Like, it can be great for
There's a
getting
fine
people in
line
a
between
like this.
highly motivated and obsessed.
Yeah, I think that this is a very good way of putting that. But the other side of that sword is sometimes the motivation allows you to cope with the pressure as well. So you know what? Like, yes, there is a lot of problems here. There are a lot of pressure in here, but I really want to get this done. And then you can cope with that pressure in a much more positive way. See what I'm saying? Is because like you don't see that as a pressure. You just see like, you know what, those are constraints that I need to work under, but I really want to do that. I'm
I'm
motivated by that.
I'm not
It
sure
might
if
protect you in a
I'm
way.
not
It
sure
might
if
cause it
more
or protect you.
sorry, I'm not sure if motivation is the thing that actually allows you to cope with pressure. Um, I think it's a different skill, and maybe that's another thing that we can talk
Alleviates.
about. It's
Wouldn't it alleviate it a bit? Like,
no, like you can be highly motivated and still feel very much under pressure, right? Uh, think maybe it's a very different fireside chat on how to deal with pressure, because um, one of the things that I was talking about earlier, flow, for example, may be able to help you, because flow is a tactical thing. You're looking at the task at hand, and you're not worrying too much about the kind of the wider things, where the pressure is coming from, and can allow you to kind of hold it at bay for the time being. uh, Motivation can certainly, if you're working in pressurized environments, um, it can it can help it can help you kind of move through it. But whether it helps you deal with pressure directly, I don't think so. You can, but we were talking about burnout. uh, Motivation can definitely, if you're highly motivated, you can still be burnt out. In fact,
yeah.
it can be a very strong reason for burnouts. You work well, burnout is related to spending so much energy that you are exhausted, right? And exhausted for the long term. So it's not just about going to sleep and waking up the next day to do that again. So that's what, and motivation can be quite a strong part of the fact that in fact, the only two reasons that you will work hard is pressure. You have a lot of pressure, even if whether you don't want to do something, but you really have to do it because you are in fear. So pressure is related to fear. Or motivation. There is no pressure other than you being highly motivated. You want to achieve this result, but you're so
And how many
motivated to do it.
times, exactly, and how many times, like even ourselves or even people that we know very closely, worked on weekends, not because they had a deadline, it's just because they really
They
wanted to
really,
finish that piece of work.
exactly.
Okay, so fear or so extrinsic motivators like fear or bonuses or the card and stick side of things. Yeah, so that's one, and the other one is internal. It's like, hey, I really want to get this done. Like,
I'm really loving it. I
mastery.
really
Like
want to
I
work on it.
really like
Yeah.
how it's possible that I
and
cannot
and
do this.
and you
I'm
get
gonna put
yourself
some
to a
extra.
point where, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And in fact, motivation is that's what I mean. There's a fine line between motivation and obsession, and when it becomes obsession, that is when it's unhealthy, because you are not listening to your body, you're not listening to your other needs, and the rest, the all the rest of your life that you're not considering that's happening around you, because you are so um, immersed into this
Absorbed. Yeah.
thing at hand, and you're not even listening to your own self, your own body, and you can get burnout. And I think that's what I mean. Motivation actually is a very strong reason for burnout.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
dealing
So
with pressure is different, I think. Is
it is
how
a
you deal with
different
pressure
kind
is
of,
yeah,
yeah.
is a different kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we are like just over an hour now, so I think it's probably a good the right time to start wrapping up.
Hmm.
The original question was like, whose responsibility is it to motivate you? And I think that most of us were talking about well, it should come from within, uh, but there is of course that there is also responsibility of companies. This is what I understood from our conversation. Of course, that if you are a manager, if you are a company, you want to make sure your company, your people are motivated, and that means sometimes make sure that the environment can motivate them, because like quite often in a position of power in a company, you can control a little bit better the environment that people are in. But as an individual, you should also be trying to impact that environment, contribute to that environment positively, so that you are also motivated by it. So what are the final words from both of you? Those are would be my final words.
I think mine would be similar. I think environment has a very large part to play in your motivation. But given that the environment is good, you can still be demotivated, right? So it's important to to know that, well, first of all, that you have a big part to play in your motivation, right? And when you feel yourself demotivated, for the first thing you should try to look at, are you playing your part? And if you are playing your part and you're doing everything, and you this still all that you can change about the environment you have, and you're still demotivated, then it's time to change that environment. But before you do that, look into yourself and see why, and whether you've done everything, and whether if you go to some a different environment, whether things would be different.
What I would say is, spend some time getting to know what you really want to do, like that self-awareness that I was talking about. There's lots of the that phrase, if you don't like the way things are, you're not a tree, move, no, or something like
You're
that.
not a tree.
Exactly, like you can do things, so
Some trees
running.
move, some trees move.
The ants in Lord of the Rings, right?
Really.
Yeah.
I was looking at a
So
bit less magical trees, but yes, that too.
but the whole point is, yes, you can move, and you can run away from the situation, but if you don't understand what is it, no, then you may be running forward to the same problem again and again and again, right? So I feel like spending some time to really get to know what it is that you want to do, like how, career planning, like all of these things that we discuss in other sessions, is a good investment on anyone's part, and that will give you a better foundation to decide what to do, whether you want to invest in changing how things are and actually, finding and shaping your environment, or getting the support to do that, or you just need to find a different environment, right? But you need to do the work. Like, don't just, you know put it on someone else's shoulders, right? Like, dedicate some time to really see what it is that you want to accomplish, and get it done. That's what I would say.
Exactly. As Mesh was saying, you are part of the environment, so help to shape it. Right. Okay. So thanks very much for everyone. This was the first fireside chat of the year. If you liked watch it, like, please put the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let us know. Let us know what you think about this subject, or even like subjects that you'd like us to be discussing in future fireside chats. So with that, we'll be wrapping up. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye bye.